The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. At 6:05 p.m. on Thursday, April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King was shot dead while standing on a balcony outside his second-floor room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. News of King's assassination provoked large outbreaks of racial violence, resulting in more than 40 deaths nationally and extensive property damage in over 100 American cities. James Earl Ray, a 40-year-old escaped fugitive, ultimately confessed to the crime and was sentenced to a 99-year jail term. During King's funeral, a tape recording was played in which King spoke of how he wanted to be remembered after his death. "I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King, Jr. tried to give his life serving others." King had arrived in Tennessee on Wednesday, April 3rd, to prepare for a march the following Monday in support of striking Memphis sanitation workers. When Martin Luther King, Jr. was getting ready to leave the Lorraine Motel and go to a dinner at the home of Memphis minister Samuel "Billy" Kyles, he stepped out onto the balcony of room 306 at the Lorraine Motel to chat with Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, colleagues who were standing in the parking area below. A single shot fired by an assassin caused significant wounds to be sustained by the victim on the lower right side of his face. Ralph Abernathy cradled Martin Luther King Jr.'s head as other SCLC aides ran to him for assistance. Others on the balcony pointed across the street toward the rear of a boarding house on South Main Street where the gunfire looked to have originated. An ambulance took King to St. Joseph's Hospital, where physicians pronounced him dead at 7:05 p.m. President Lyndon B. Johnson called for a national day of mourning to be held on April 7th. The subsequent days saw the closure of public libraries, museums, schools, and companies, in addition to the postponement of the Academy Awards ceremony and a large number of athletic events. On April 8th, the widow of Martin Luther King, Jr., Coretta Scott King, and other family members joined thousands of other participants in a march in Memphis to remember King and show support for the sanitation workers. King's funeral service was placed the following day in Atlanta at Ebenezer Baptist Church. It was attended by many of the nation's political and civil rights leaders, including Jacqueline Kennedy, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, and Ralph Bunche. Benjamin Mays, president of Morehouse College, gave the eulogy and predicted that Martin Luther King, Jr. would probably say that, if death had to come, "I am sure there was no greater cause to die for than fighting to get a just wage for garbage collectors." Mays, April 9, 1968. Mays presented the eulogy. Over 100,000 mourners accompanied two mules dragging King's casket through the streets of Atlanta. After another ceremony on the Morehouse campus, King's body was initially interred at South View Cemetery. After some time, it was relocated to a crypt at the King Center, an institution that was established by King's widow. The crypt is located near Ebenezer Church. Shortly after the assassination, a policeman uncovered a bundle containing a .30.06 Remington rifle next door to the boarding house. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, were able to track down the source of the largest case in the agency's history to a residence in Atlanta. Fingerprints recovered in the flat matched those of James Earl Ray, a fugitive who had escaped from a Missouri prison in April 1967. Additional information was uncovered by Memphis law enforcement and FBI officials indicating that Ray had checked into a rooming house on South Main Street on April 4th and that he had taken a room on the second floor that was located next to a shared restroom and had a view of the Lorraine Motel. The identification of Ray as a suspect led to an international manhunt. On July 19, 1968, Ray was extradited to the United States from Britain to stand prosecution. In exchange for Ray's guilty plea to murder charges in March 1969, prosecutors in Tennessee agreed to drop their pursuit of the capital penalty as part of a plea bargain. The circumstances up to the plea eventually became a topic of controversy when Ray recanted his confession soon after being sentenced to a 99-year term in jail. During the years following King's killing, suspicions regarding the soundness of the case against Ray were fueled by revelations of the massive surveillance of King by the FBI and other government agencies. Beginning in 1976, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, chaired by Representative Louis Stokes, examined the evidence concerning King's assassination, as well as that of President John F. Kennedy. The committee's final report concluded that Ray may have had co-conspirators. The investigation nonetheless determined that there was no persuasive proof of government cooperation in King's assassination. After recanting his guilty plea, Ray continued to maintain his innocence, claiming to have been framed by a gun smuggler he knew as Raoul. In 1993, Ray's attorney, William F. Pepper, attempted to garner public support for reopening Ray's case by conducting a televised fake trial of Ray in which the jury declared Ray not guilty of the charges against him. Pepper's goal was to demonstrate that the case should be reopened. In 1997, members of King's family openly backed Ray's plea for a new trial, and King's son Dexter Scott King endorsed Ray's claims of innocence during a televised jail contact. Despite this backing, Tennessee officials refused to review the case, and Ray died in prison on April 23, 1998. Even after Ray's death, conspiracy suspicions continued to arise. Pepper obtained a symbolic civil verdict of wrongful death in 1999 against Lloyd Jowers, the proprietor of Jim's Grill, a restaurant that was located just across the street from the Lorraine Motel. The verdict was secured on behalf of the King's widow and their children. Although the trial revealed substantial testimony that contradicted the original case against Ray, the Justice Department declared in 2000 that its internal inquiry, initiated in 1998 at the King family's request, had failed to discover sufficient evidence to support a further investigation. Alternative explanations. The results of two independent ballistic tests carried out in 1998 on the Remington Gamemaster, which was purportedly used by Ray in the assassination, were inconclusive, according to a report by CBS. Some witnesses who were there with King at the time of the shooting stated that the shot had been fired from a different area and not from Ray's window. These witnesses thought that the source was a location behind dense shrubbery that was located close to the rooming house. Reverend James Lawson, a friend of King's and an organizer for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, has hypothesized that the main motivation for the assassination was the Poor People's Campaign's planned occupation of Washington, D.C. Shortly, Lawson also stated during the civil trial that King alienated President Johnson and other prominent government players when he condemned the Vietnam War on April 4, 1967, exactly 1 year before he was assassinated. This was mentioned by Lawson throughout the trial. During the time leading up to his murder, Martin Luther King Jr. may have been the subject of an investigation by the counterintelligence program known as COINTELPRO, and he may have also been observed by several military intelligence organizations working under the guise of an operation known as Lantern Spike. The King family and some think that the assassination was the result of a conspiracy involving the U.S. government, the Mafia, and Memphis police, as alleged by Lloyd Jowers in 1993. They believe that Ray was a scapegoat. In 1999, the family of the deceased person sued Jowers for wrongful death, seeking compensation for $10 million. Their counsel argued in the closing phase of the case that it was not about the money. Thus, he requested that the jury only award $100 in damages. During the trial, both of the parties provided evidence that supported their allegations of a conspiracy, including the government. The accused government agencies could not defend themselves or reply because they were not identified as defendants. Based on the evidence, the jury found that Jowers and others were part of a conspiracy to kill King and granted the family the symbolic $100 they wanted in damages. The accusations, as well as the verdict that was reached by the jury in Memphis, were later challenged by the United States Department of Justice in the year 2000 because there was an apparent lack of proof. If you liked this video, follow us and you will find many videos that will help you to transform your life. Thanks for watching all the video. Please subscribe and hit the bell. See you soon.